Okay, oh no, yeah, we'll have time for questions. I'll go ahead and get started, and then if people want to join, they can trickle in. So for those of you who I haven't met, my name's Zach. I'm the organist here. I've been here for 6 years now. I started at the same time that Dr. Chris Gravis did. We knew each other from undergrad back at the University of Redlands. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think maybe it would make the most sense to have everyone on this side. This microphone, if you would like, we could turn it on the speakers, but this one is just for the live stream, just in case anybody's watching on the live stream. So I have this glorious organ. This organ was installed in 1924 by the E.M. Skinner, most well-known, best organ builders of all time. And I have the quote of what he wrote. Vierne wrote in a letter, let's see, "Not a day passes that I don't dream about your magnificent instruments." Great division. But it's still a magnificent instrument. So I thought I would start by telling you the so as all organs are, they're powered by air, and there is down in the basement. I don't suggest going down there because of asbestos and other things you might find. There is even a sign, asbestos warning. So, but down in the basement, there is a giant electric motor. And if you go down there, when I turn this on, you'll hear it rumbling, and it reminds me of the scary furnace in Home Alone that Kevin is afraid of. A scary sound. It produces a lot of air pressure that powers all 3,400 something pipes. I can never remember the exact number, but about 3,400 in this organ receive that air from giant pipes from downstairs. This organ has 56 ranks. A rank is just a line of ordered. It's a good thing that they're in order, otherwise anything could happen. And then stops. The reason that those two numbers match up is that some of the stop is when I pull a knob, and I can show you later, when I pull one of the knobs on the organ, it allows me to play pipes of a similar sound, or of the same sound. So if I want to play something that sounds like a flute, I pull the flute stop. But there are some stops that require multiple sets of pipes to make the sound. So for instance, stop has two sets of pipes that in combination give you that sound. So one is the fundamental tone, and then higher, or a sixth higher, or a 10th higher as far as the intervals. And when those two sounds work together, thing for stop, which is one that's slightly out of tune. There are two ranks of pipes slightly out of tune with each other, give that shimmering effect. Quite a lot at that all those pipes are shoved up there in that tiny space. Well, actually, interestingly, the original plan for this organ was for it to be on the sides. Some pipes up there and some pipes up here, because the Lady Chapel right here was going to be underground. It was going to be a crypt. And I don't remember why, but it was decided that the Lady Chapel should be higher at ground level. And so they had to do the plan and fit all of these organ pipes up there. I would love to give you a tour, but it's like crawling through a maze. Tiny doors, you have to crawl on your hands and feet. Very, very cramped up there. So the way that I do my best to manage pipes from divisions. This organ has 5 divisions. Almost all organs division, which has most of the principal sounding organs. Those are typically used for hymn accompanying. They're the loudest. And then the second most common division is called the swell. And that has a wider variety of kinds of sounds. And it's called swell because it's what we call under expression, which means that all of the pipes, if I could show you up there, all of the pipes of the swell are hidden behind doors that I can open and close with an expression pedal. So those are the 2 most common divisions, the great and the swell. This organ has 3 more. There's one called the choir, which is a counterpart to the swell. It gets its name because most choir divisions were designed for choral accompanying. On this particular organ, I tend to use the swell to accompany the choir. It has nicer sounds on it, in my opinion. But both of those are under expression. So I have the great, which is all these. You can see some of the pipes of the great right there. There's no way that I can change the volume of that. They're just there. They're not hidden behind doors. But both the swell and the choir are hidden behind doors. Then on this organ, we have what's called the solo division, which has a small selection of stops that I might use for a solo melody. There's a beautiful horn that will never stay in tune, so I can use it for. You'll hear it on Lessons and Carols if you come. Express control volume of each of those 3 divisions. Then there's the pedal division, which is all the notes that I play with my feet. And then we're all those pipes back there, I can control from here, which is pretty awesome. Use that for hymn accompanying, especially because I can surround you with sound. It's not just from here, it's also from back there. And if there's a hymn melody that I want to accentuate, or maybe it's a hymn that we don't do that often, a lot of the time I'll play the melody from back there and then play the accompaniment from up here, so the congregation finds it easier to hear the melody. We also have, I'll show you in a moment, the hooded trumpet back there, which is the loudest sound on this organ. It's the one that kind of looks like snakes. It's a pipe that goes up, and then there's a hood on it. It's called the hooded trumpet. That's under an immense amount of air pressure and is extremely loud. I try to reserve it for triumphant moments. So those are the divisions of this organ, and I control them using the 4 manuals on the organ. From top to bottom, I can play the solo manual up top, then the swell, then the great, then the choir. So a lot of the time, like what you heard in the Jonathan Dove piece today, with a piece with quick contrasts, I might be playing a very loud sound on the great manual and then switch to the choir very quickly for a quieter sound for when, for instance, the choir is singing, and then I can switch back, and that lets me switch sounds very quickly. But that wouldn't quite be enough for most complicated music. If all I could do was just set. That's only 4. And choral accompaniment end up being enough. And one of the problems of organ playing is that when your hands and your feet are busy, not only is it difficult to turn pages, which I always have to work out, but I might not have a hand free for very long to find a new sound. There's all the stops are over here, and I might not have time to, oh, where's the oboe? I want the oboe. By that time, Chris is 4 bars ahead of me and glaring over like, what's going on? Organ builders invented what's called pistons. So there's a series of buttons under each of the manuals, numbered, and I can preset those to give me a certain combination of stops. So let's say I start out with a very quiet sound and then I need an instantly louder sound. I can hit that button and it draws any number of stops that I want all at the same time. So I don't have to go reach around and do it one by one. Before those pistons existed, organists had assistants, and sometimes you'll still see that, like at Saint-Sulpice in France. There aren't those kinds of pistons and presets that you can make, so there are usually 2 assistants on either side, reading the music and drawing and closing stops as the music goes. The other thing that I'm really a sequencer. And for instance, for the Jonathan Dove piece today, that Wild Gloria, I had a series of presets, 1 through, I think, 14 or 15 presets that change everything on the organ all at once. And I can do that with a toe stud. I can sort of next, 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 next. Not all organs have that, and whenever I have to play an organ that doesn't have it, it stresses me out. But it's very useful to have that computer that I can preset a series of different sounds, and therefore I don't have to remember which one was I supposed to press at this time. I just say that toe piston, hit it with my foot, and then it's the next one. Yes, questions? They were, yeah. Not. I was added. I believe those probably started around the turn of the century. That technology. That's my guess. Don't quote me on that, but pistons. Yes. Yeah. It's almost all mechanical. The sequencer is a computer, but this sequencer was probably added in the 60s or 70s. So there's far more power in my iPhone than there is on this. There are 100 different levels. So one other thing I forgot to tell you, control it from. In addition to having pistons and the sequencer, I can connect different manual divisions to each other. So a lot of the time, I will be playing on the grate, but direct the sound from the swell also to be the sound from the choir also. Mechanical. That's electric. A lot of organs, like Baroque organs, the kind that Bach played on, if there was that coupler that we call it, like if you wanted to play the grate and the swell at the same time, the keys would be too heavy to press. So I'm thankful that I don't have to deal with that. And you'll see that at, I think Saint-Sulpice is also like that, a mechanical, where you'll see the Daniel Roth, the organist there. If everything is all directed all at once, full organ, he's really playing. Like you got to have a lot of weight because you're literally moving twice or 3 times as many mechanical actions. So any questions about that so far? I'm gonna go through and show you some of those sounds now. But any questions about the construction? Yeah.
Yeah. What do you use for air?
It's the same process. I actually don't know where that tube is, but there's a pipe that goes back there and shoves the air back there.
You're saying your biggest.
Yeah, it's 10 foot-pounds of pressure for that trumpet.
And what kind of latency is there?
Oh, I'll show you a little bit. It's quite fast. It's an electrical signal, but because the air pressure is already waiting to be released. But I would say it's about a quarter second of a delay back there. For most of the kind of music we do here, it doesn't matter so much. But for instance, on the Glory today, which is very moving eighth notes, I wouldn't use both of these together because it would start to get messy. Yes.
In organ music,
Both can be very complex. For most good organ composers will not have too many sections of music that are complicated with both. Like for instance, in the Gloria today, there's a part with a very complicated pedal part, and all the hands are doing is just holding big chords while the other stuff is going on. So yes, typically, but for instance, there are many of the Bach preludes and fugues where it's essentially a trio or a quartet with one melody in one hand, one melody in the other, melody in the feet, and all complicated all at once. But you're definitely right that is one of the most difficult things about organ music is if they're all complicated parts going on all at once. Those are the parts that you have to prepare the most, for sure. Yeah. Oh.
I was just wondering about if this organ has like a chime capability. You know, I hear from the church across the street, the Catholic church, there the bells are going off. And I wondered if we had a bell or chime capability.
We don't have chimes here, but we do have something you heard today called the Zimbelstern, which is otherwise known as a bell tree. It's a line of bells with an electrical motor that turns and hits the bells. And I use this sparingly, but it's fun when it happens. So you'll hear that on the most common place I use that is Christmas Eve. There's lots of options for that. And Zimbelstern period a lot used strangely enough, during fugues. Organists would play the prelude, and then at the fugue with all the moving parts, they would turn on the Zimbelstern, at least according to scholars, which I find sort of strange. But yes, I did right at the end of the Gloria. Yeah. It's up in this corner right here. Yeah, it's a little electrical motor. I'm sorry? Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I think yes, question. I'd say moderately complicated. Yeah.
I've seen him play it on like YouTube and everything.
Yeah.
I've heard it live. Excuse me.
No, it's fine.
That was great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, one of the complications for that for me this week, the organ is being tuned right before lessons and carols, and right about this at the beginning of the year, and then and windy all the wood contracts, and so not quite in tune right now, and they will be soon when we get it tuned. But normally I would use the what we call the tuba mirabilis, which is the one of the loud trumpet stops that I have on this one. It's not quite in tune for the melody part of that particular piece. It's not in tune right now, so I had to switch which manual I was playing on, which complicated it today. But yes.
Where do organs like to live best?
In general, humid climate. Not like moderately humid climates with, ideally organs like climate control. So controlled temperature, but we don't have that here.
Historical TV show, and they're saying something like, in Germany, the organs get out of tune or get things wrong with them faster, and in Italy, it's well, that's worse people, and they're being punished.
Yeah, the Mediterranean climate is going to be friendly to organs than giant shifts in humidity and temperature. And really, it's not that, I think organs, typically they would enjoy what humans would, like 72 degrees and constant humidity all the time. Yeah. As long as it's not. But in general, organs just. So we'd. Yes. This organ gets tuned about 4 organs where they have constant or once a month. But it's a team of 2, 3 sometimes, and they spend half the day here tuning it. They are that actually. I wish I knew more about this because then I could do it myself. But then you could give me $800. And in the one that I know, like for a typical principal organ stop, the kind of sound that is the organ sound that's not trying to imitate another instrument. There's a strip of metal that you can twist that lets more or less air out. There are so many other strips of metal that you can move or twist, or I don't know specifically more about that. Maybe Sue does. Have you?
No, because it's always been up.
Right.
Something like that.
It's some organists are also organ technicians. For the most part, like I do go up there every once in a while to like. For instance, right now it's been very dry, and one of the bellows, when it gets dry, the little air leak that goes, and I there shut every once in a while during this. I do go up. And training it takes to tune it without damaging it is above my knowledge. It'd be interesting to have our organ Rosales people come in and do a presentation at some point on how they take care of it. When since on Christmas Eve, when it's typically very cold and the organ is lower in pitch than they would typically tune to, so they have instruments down to match the organ. If you ask an organ tuner, can you make this organ a 440 hertz? They'll look at you like you're insane. Because usually they just take whatever the most stable stop is, for instance, a principal stop that tends to not go out of tune. They just tune the organ to that, whether it's at A438 or A442 or whatever it is, rather than trying to move the entire organ. So I think I'll show you kinds of sounds. So the basic principal sound of the organ stop is something like this. Sounds like an and then I can have that same sound an octave higher. And I have a of the swell division as well. Slightly quieter. And I can change the volume. And then, for instance, the swell division is all behind doors that I can open and close with a pedal down here. And if you want to see it, or flutes on the swell division in this organ. And I have some really nice flutes. Is it has what we call a tremulant, which is a turning. Have some really nice strings. There's another one over here, a very quiet, the choir manual. And that's with it all the way open. I can, very, very quiet. Almost imperceptible. Then come my favorite, which, so either things that are imitating oboes, bassoons, trumpets, and technically the trumpet in orchestra music is a brass instrument, but the construction, and as far as organ is concerned, is called a reed. So here's our beautiful bassoon stop. Our oboe is beautiful. This is my favorite. Opening with on the oboe is so nice. Also with the tremulant, with a little bit of vibrato. And then we've got some trumpets, like on the grate. It's a fun trumpet. Then some pedal stops. So we have a couple flutes, something that sounds like low contrabasses, like a string. And then my favorites in the pedal division, the trumpet. There, so they're very, very loud. I use these at the most exulting moments. So if I put that all something quite soft. And then for extra effect, we can have the trumpet at the back. that, you wouldn't really notice the delay so much. This stop. You can feel it being slightly behind. Great. Any?
Is that the full organ? Like full organ?
Almost. I can't really do an example of the full organ right now because there's quite a few things that aren't in tune enough. But that almost. The one thing that I would add, and I can just show you. Excuse me while I put my other shoes on. I do, yeah. Actually, if you want to see them, they look like this. They're like dance shoes, and it enables me to play scales with toe to heel. And they're felt bottom shoes, so it makes it easier to feel where I am. Not all organists use them. You'll see some very, very good, very. I prefer shoes because they're thinner, and it helps not accidentally hit two pedals at once. They're called organ master shoes, and if you see an organist with organ shoes, it's probably those. I'll show you a little bit of what I would do for a true full organ sound, and you can hear it ramp up. It'll get quite loud. So here's what I would call like 80%, 85 maybe. Then I can couple a few of them together. Then I can add, let's see, solo, where is it? Here we go. Then there are a couple that I really like but are not quite in tune right now. Then if I like this. I have to be careful when I practice music that's that loud because I'll notice when I get too caught up in the music and play it a number of times in a row, I'll leave and my ears will be ringing a little bit. It's very, very loud. So I tend to practice that music not at full volume and then just do it on the day of. So the last thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is how I use the bass. Play the part in my feet. So I did a little bit of today on this hymn. So I'll do it a little bit quieter so you can hear the difference. So if I play the melody in this voice and then accompaniment in the other parts, it sounds like this. So we can have that nice contrast. And it's something that all organ teachers will make their organ students do, especially to scare them at the drop of the hat. Like, oh, you learned this in your left hand, or solo the melody in your right hand and play the other parts in your left hand, which is harder than it sounds, actually. When I first started doing it, and mainly the melody part is not difficult to play in one hand. The really difficult part is playing the alto and the tenor left hand, because they're written in two different clefs. One is in the treble, one is in the bass clef. You have to combine those in your left hand and then play the part in the pedals. So I'll do that for variety within a hymn tune. And then obviously switching the registration of the organ, switching the kind of sounds that I'm using to try to reflect the word. First verse, I'll have most of the reeds and mixture stops pulled. And then on a quieter verse, I'll take most of those away to be more subdued. Yes? Go ahead. Thank you, Deacon Margaret. Yes, yes. And you. So you read my mind. The next thing that I was gonna talk about was the necessity of being able to improvise on the organ. So that happens in hymns as well. And so, like for instance, if there's an interlude or an introduction that's not written, sometimes I've planned that out in advance. A lot of the time, I invent something based on the hymn itself, maybe with a slightly different harmony. One thing that we learn. Most music students in college would learn how to, especially keyboardists, would learn how to reharmonize a melody. So maybe I can take this melody, and the original harmonization I might do something like change the chord that will still fit with the melody. So I do that a lot, especially if everyone else. For the sixth verse, some do that. I'll just try to invent new harmonies to add to those, as well as the interludes and fanfares at the beginning. Yes, question? Both. Sometimes I will have planned it out, or sometimes a choir descant. Sometimes for like a last verse with the sopranos sing the high soaring melody that everyone loves. Most of those are planned out in advance, and sometimes they have organ parts that are written out. I'll do that sometimes. We'll use the famous David Wilcox descants quite a lot. I have several books here of T. Tertius Noble, famous Anglican organist, last verse reharmonizations. So if I can't think of something on myself, there's 100 of them in this book and a lot of the time I say, oh, I wonder if there's one for, Old Hundredth. Oh, there it is, and then I play that. So I'll do that kind of improvising with hymns. But also there are many parts in the service where we need to fill a little bit of time. And most of that I will improvise on the fly, but I will try to take it from the mood of. So, for instance, Beautiful Haunting on You Stay by Jonathan Dove. When I improvised after that, I did something in that style. Or if I improvise after the gospel reading, I'll try to take inspiration from that and see what I can invent something in the mood. I'm going to play a different improvisation after the gospel reading in Lent. The gospel. It's a skill that organists have to learn how to do. Most of the time, you just trust yourself. In that way, does anybody have a favorite hymn tune? Be Thou My Vision. I love that one. I'll play a little 2-minute improvisation on Be Thou My Vision. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you picked one I know. So I think I'll play one other piece for you. We'll end with a beautiful piece by Bach. And I can show something similar to what I just did. One of my favorite sounds, especially on this organ, is a beautiful solo stop accompanied by string stops in the left and the pedals. So I'm going to play something from the Orgelbüchlein by Bach, and then we can take a couple questions, and that'll be it. Yeah, Deacon Margaret. Yeah, yeah. Almost always, that's not prepared in advance. Whatever strikes my mood. Yeah, and most of the time I'm coordinating with Chris on that because a lot of time I can't see, so I'm looking at Chris and he'll give me the signal, he'll do this if he wants me to play a little bit or like, stop or whatever. So we definitely check in with each other as that happens. Yep. Exactly.
Because of some errors, you got to do that a lot.
I don't mind.
Margaret's laughing at me because I was muttering under my breath.
Yeah, it's really very helpful because I think it helps the congregation think or believe that we really know what we're doing.
That's what we're here for. Yes.
In our last church at St. Paul's in San Diego, they had like driveway mirrors at strategic place homes that you could see, I guess.
Right. Some churches have a mirror. Like for instance, there are many churches where the organist is facing away from the choir and the director, and so there's a mirror that you can look in, like a rearview mirror. And some churches also have video feeds. Like for instance, if the organ is up in the loft, no way to see except for watching the video feed. Like there's one at King's College in Cambridge. There's a video screen on the organ console, where you can see everything what's going on.
Yeah, I was just saying, what you mentioned about Chris, that must be really useful because it's hard for us to
and especially with the choir here, if they're standing, I can't see anything. So I look over at Chris and beg him to tell me where we are. All right, I'm going to play a little Bach for you. This one is, I'm going to solo out the melody using the flutes and what we call the Natzard on the choir manual. It's sounding a sixth above. Gives it a nice little zingy color. And I'm going to accompany that with a flute and a string on the swell manual. Oh, not that one. And couple that to the pedal. This is a lovely piece called When in the Hour of Our Utmost Need. Thank you, thank you. Here, I'll come out this way. So any other questions that I can answer before?
Question about like what your week looks like between, like what a week of preparation looks like. Like we're gonna leave here today and you're gonna do this all again next week. So like, how does that, what does that look like for you?
Well, my day job is I'm a music teacher. So I teach over at the Windward School in West LA. A lot of the time my schedule there means I have a break in the middle of the day of a couple hours, and so I'll come over here and practice for a few hours. It really depends on the kind of, how difficult the music is we're doing on any given day. So for instance, the first time that we did the Jonathan Dove Mass, this is the second time we've done it here. First time, I probably to get that ready. But then there are some weeks where we're doing things that I don't have to practice that much. So I'll come in once and set all my registrations, and then that's it. Coming in this season, like from Advent until Christmas, I'm here days practicing, weekdays at least. Because I find for me it's much more useful to practice an hour or two every single day rather than a giant 5-hour session on Saturday. So it varies. Usually about hours, and then during busy times, 15. Was there another? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted, I don't know if you had shared this before I got here. If you could tell us a little bit about the non-St. John's world that you live.
Oh, yeah.
And are you part of like a professional organization and do you travel and other than local? And also, is it important that you be in touch with the manufacturers of organs?
Yeah, interesting question. The first one, as far as traveling, I do most of my time is here in LA. I do a lot of piano accompanying of choirs and singers. That's a big part of my job at my school, is playing for music directing and playing for the musical theater program. I accompany for the Long Beach Camerata Singers down in Long Beach. I get calls a lot of the time to play for opera auditions and opera productions. That was one of my former lives was an opera pianist at UCLA. I was on staff there playing opera. So I still do that a fair amount. But mostly it's teaching and local playing. Rarely do I more someday, but scheduling it will be a lot. And then your second question about whether I keep up with the organ technology, mostly I trust our organ builders here to do that. It will be a discussion as far about our development project. There's lots of things that need to be updated on this organ, so as we move forward with that, there will be discussions that Chris and myself will be part of, where we're trying to figure out the best route. But for the most part, we would defer to our organ technicians who are really in that world. And organ technology, as far as the way that the pipes are constructed and how they actually work, there are updates, but kind of like with old classic pianos, like Steinways from the 1920s, they're different than a brand new Steinway today, even though the technology has been updated. So it's always a trade-off. There are better technologies, like for instance, better console technologies, better computers, electrical relay systems, and all of that. But as far as these, like the beautiful flute pipes that Skinner made for this organ, those can't really be recreated. Yeah.
Remember, I was someplace at some event. I think it was the people that adopt children. I can't remember. But remember, you played.
Oh.
Little group, and you played jazz.
I do. I have a little jazz trio. Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
We were going to play last night before the event got canceled. So yeah. You'll hear me play jazz again.
We were someplace maybe in Pasadena. I can't remember.
Yeah. It was.
Surprised to see you, and then you were just your regular amazing self.
Oh, thank you, Deacon Margaret.
Didn't play any church music at all.
No, I don't mix those worlds much. I don't think for the most part, all the things you are. But you never know. Maybe you're tempting me. Yes, Bishop. Thank you, Bishop. Yes, and of course, and the choir. And that's the one thing that is that I didn't mention yet today. That's my favorite thing to do on the organ here is accompany the choir on accompanied anthems. This instrument is wonderful, kind of thing. It has a lot of range of dynamic and color, and so accompanying something like the Dove Mass today is definitely my favorite part of this. I like playing the voluntaries, and I like improvising, and of course, and the hymns with the choir. But the accompanied choir anthems are and we have such a wonderful choir here that it's inspiring every Sunday. Yes.
So when you brought up about how much you enjoy accompanying, then I have to ask though, are you planning any solo recitals with the organ? Have you done that?
I have not done that. It's in the back of my mind. Definitely.
Or maybe for us, maybe not.
Well, yeah. To put on a solo recital is a lot of work. So it would have to be a long-term plan sort of thing. But it's something that I've entertained that idea for sure. So yes, someday it will happen for sure. I don't have an agent. If you know who wants to sign me, then sure. Yeah, one more. Oh man. I, s-
Cathedral organs in Greece, like in Athens, the organs existed in the prehistory of humanity as well. They actually found prehistoric organs that would function with water. Yeah.
I don't know that off the top of my head, but if I were to make a guess, there's somewhere in the back of my mind, it's telling me in the Netherlands, I believe there's a really old organ from around like 1450 or 1460 that's still in use. I don't remember where exactly that one is, but it's somewhere in that area. But the kind of organ where back in the day you had two would pump the bellows while you're playing, no electric motors, and that was all the way through the most of the history of the organ. You needed someone to be back there physically pumping the bellows. So but let's be thankful we don't have to hire bellows people here at St. John's. Yeah, we got plenty of those for sure. Well, thank you so much for your attention. I've had a good time. And if anyone wants to come over and take a look or sit at the organ or play a few notes, just let me know.